Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, our last episode of 2025. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
On this episode, our guests are Ryan Koeslag, EVP and CEO of Mushrooms Canada, and Janet Krayden, workforce specialist. And we're talking about the amazing story. I learned a lot about the mushroom sector in Canada, and importantly, the deep interconnectivity of the temporary foreign worker permit and the damage done, collateral damage, we would say, done to the sector by a blunt instrument approach to that program. I think it's a great way to wrap the year, not the season. We'll be back on the mic next year, but it's a great way to wrap the year because these decisions made with consequences that are not always foreseen, but we're always talking about them. And the agencies like Mushrooms Canada are saying, hey, don't broad swipe the temporary foreign worker program because there is fraud in Ontario. It's necessary for agriculture, and this is a great case study in why and how it's necessary.
Oh, absolutely. So bad apples tend to get a lot of attention, and of course, politicians are pushed politically by some of these bad cases. But there are several farmers, including farmers in the mushroom industry, that actually needs that program work for them. So it was great to have them on this week. To be honest, finally, I wish we had time to cover this story before in the fall, but we had a really packed fall. So, but here we are. We made it on time.
We have been blessed this year for sure in guests and guests saying yes, which is an important piece. We've been able to tell some amazing
yes,
stories.
It's great.
It's fantastic. I mean, many highlights of the season. Not just the calendar year, but if you reflect on the calendar year all the way, we've done so many, we've had, 40, 50 interviews in this calendar year. Lots more already lined up in the can, actually, and ready to go for next year, telling the stories of grocers and telling the stories of brands and telling the stories of people like Ryan about their sector and helping us understand their sector and helping tell their stories. So listen, let's... without further ado, and there's been much ado, what are we going to talk about this episode? We're going to talk about, of course, it's a much-loved episode, the year's top 10 stories that we're going to talk about that you've published. We're going to look at new inflation data. We're going to look at what we think is going to happen big in 2026 and a few other things that we got in our back pockets. So let's kick it off. So the year's top 10 stories in food, and walk us through them. You've already published these. They're available elsewhere. We'll put a link. We'll put a link into some of the stories because already the media is picking up on it. But let me start with this question: when you approach this top 10, being a PhD, being a research, being a numbers guy, how do you approach? There's a lot of stories that happen. First of all, you got to decide which are the top 10 most important, and then you kind of got to rank them. So how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I've been asked that question by a few reporters. Essentially, we look at issues. Of course, we have to look at at stories that have actually attracted a lot of media attention, but not all of them. We also try to consider issues that are important for the food industry, because not all important issues were covered by the media. I mean, the media will cover a lot of different things, but they have so much bandwidth, they can't cover everything. But from our perspective, they were some stories that really deserved a little bit more attention. But I would say this year, most of the items on our list, on our top 10 list, actually did attract some attention, and some of them actually. Some of these stories actually went viral. So yeah, it's always a fun exercise because you kind of reflect on how the year came about, and you're always looking for these underlying themes. Like what if you were to describe 2025 in a couple of words, what would those words be essentially? And so and of course, when you go through the list, often the comment we get is, "Oh my God, it happened this year? Oh, I forgot about that."
I had the same reaction. I had that exact same reaction. It feels like I know we say this every year, but it feels like it's been an action-packed year. But this year, the chaos and the disruption seems to. I mean, it's not COVID era chaos and disruption, but I don't know whether it's because there's so much media coverage of certain things. Certainly, tariffs, the Buy Canadian movement. that's been front and center from a media, just a volume perspective, right? If not actual impact on numbers. We had a change of government. He's one seat away from a majority government, right? I mean, we've got these floor crossings going on, and it's like, this all just happened. So take us through. Take us up 10 through 1. What are the issues and just
so we'll start with 10. In the number 10 spot this year, the Crown Royal Theatrics. So I think everyone remembers when Premier Ford decided to dump a bottle of Crown Royal, which lasted about 20 years. Yeah. But
got to take that stopper out. You got to take the bar stopper out. Ounce by ounce. Oh my God.
Anyways, but to me, to us, it really kind of pointed to how people didn't know much about supply chains. I mean, he was basically dumping a bottle that was made by unionized employees in Manitoba and Quebec, and that was not going to change. As I was talking to people in Ontario, they didn't know. They thought that Diageo was actually leaving Canada altogether. So I think it was okay for the premier to be upset with the closure of the distillery, the bottling plant in Windsor, Ontario. But I mean, he was basically encouraging people to boycott a product that was actually made by unionized employees. Yeah, it still is. It hasn't changed. So lots of confusion, but lots of emotions. So that's why it made the top 10 at number 10. At number 9, Cherry Blossom. The disappearing iconic candies, Jersey Milk. We lost Jersey Milk and Cherry Blossom in 2025.
Yeah.
Are you still mourning?
No, not really. There's lots of great chocolate here on the West Coast. I think of Purdy's.
But Cherry Blossom was, I think, over 120 years old. Created in Canada, was sold to the U.S. and it needed tender love and care, but it kind of got forgotten over the years, and it was discontinued, unfortunately. So it was a sad moment for a lot of people, for sure.
Okay, number 8. Number 8 is the Buy Canadian movement and the maple washing too. So we combined both. So the Buy Canadian movement, of course, a lot of people were talking about the Buy Canadian, but there was still this ongoing debate as to, are people really buying Canadian or are they just saying it? And we saw mixed numbers there all throughout the year. I think Nick, going back to last week's conversation with Carmen, I actually think that Nielsen IQ, for those who don't know what Nick is. Yep.
Nielsen IQ, and I think they got some real numbers, and basically it was mixed. So the made in Canada products, the main kind of products actually did well, but not products of Canada. But the maple washing that came along was really also very interesting. It was attention grabbing. At the beginning, of course, we felt, grocers were making mistakes, but once you got to July, August, September, there was less tolerance for mistakes, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. Like we did see, in August, Canadian made oranges or Canadian almonds and things like that. So it was a bit wacky. And I think that the maple washing really caught the attention of a lot of people. At number 7, meat counter-economics. So it wasn't just beef, it was everything. And because of beef, it became everything. So everything got more expensive. At the meat counter, probably for the very first time since we've been following food prices, typically every year there's actually one item that is more expensive than the other. But this year, you couldn't be spared. And 2026, unfortunately, is not going to be different, unfortunately. So meat counter economics, we're at number 7. Number 6, the GST holiday. That was this year, my friend. Do you remember?
I barely remember. I thought it was last year.
In January, our food inflation rate was at minus 0.6%. Minus 6.6%. So because of the GST holiday. Yeah, absolutely. And basically in January of this year, food prices were lower than last year's. And so for a while, of course, things changed dramatically. That was actually just a couple of weeks after we released Canada's food price report for 2025. So a lot of people would say, your forecast was way off. Well, it's January, and here we are at 4.7%. So really, the GST holiday was, in fact, a holiday, but we do believe it opened up the door to opportunistic pricing, pushing prices even higher. There's a lot of push to make this to make this holiday permanent. We talked about it last week with Restaurants Canada's push to eliminate the GST. I'm supportive of that personally.
You call it the Restaurants Canada push, but you've been talking about You've been talking about that issue on this podcast since the beginning of the podcast, if not before.
Since the beginning, yeah. Taxing food is immoral. I've always going to believe that, and so I do believe that even in food service, we need to think about how we can actually utilize restaurants as a bait, as an economic bait to get people out there and spend. So GST number 6 and number 5. That's the one I think you would agree with. It's the Ozempic effect, the GLP-1 drugs. On January 1st, generic drugs are going to become are going on the market, and so we are expecting that phenomena to pick up steam even more. So yeah, Ozempic, number 5.
My comment on that, both on the expected and unexpected. The expected is a drag on performance for people when they start to downshift. We're seeing this in the States because we can see it coming, and we see it here in Canada on alcohol, which is such an important part both for the industry, but also for restaurants, right? Yeah. They have a lot of margin in that. But also, there's an upside that I didn't anticipate in the QSR area where people are dropping in and they're looking for more protein smoothies. And I thought it would really impact much, much more the QSR. Of course, it is in some consequences, but they're a very creative group and they've responded well. And you've characterized them this season as protein orphans, as people kind of shift away from and look for different proteins. So, I in my other world in retail, we're looking at it and we're seeing things like apparel sales increasing in smaller sizes, like people are refreshing their wardrobes. But I was thinking more in the context of less positive things for the food industry. But I think both innovation and just expected and unexpected consequences.
I think it's a phenomena because I think the next big thing in food after protein will be fiber. I've been talking to a few snacking companies, and that's what they're seeing. They're starting to align their R&D agenda around fiber as the next big thing, and I agree with that. So we're going back to authenticity. We're going back to basics. With protein now being big, and then after that, it's going to be fiber. So number 5, GLP-1 drugs. Number 4, the clone meat controversy, which actually started right here on our podcast. Do you remember?
Yes. You heard it here. You heard it here first. Yeah. That's right.
So number 4, that made Health Canada look really bad. I mean, they were about to approve clone meat, and our good friend Vincent Breton, the CEO of Du Breton, he's the guy that told me what was going on, and he basically gave me all the information that I needed to actually get the news out. And then what was really great to see was media picking the story up and making the story viral. And without media, I don't think we would have actually seen that pause that was announced by Health Canada. It wasn't a press release; it was just a post on their website. So not a good day. It wasn't a good day for Health Canada, but a good day, I think, for consumer and respect towards consumers in general.
Now, I did see some feedback. That's number 4. I did see some feedback. I think it was in LinkedIn of some people saying, "Hey, you're making a mountain out of a molehill here. You're this isn't a real story. It's not a fake story, so to speak, but you're making way more of this than should be made out of." Yeah. What do you make of that? How would you counter that assessment of this whole issue?
Well, I think that they're coming from a place where there is no risk. That risks are contained, risks are measured, and it's true. But that's not what we're talking about here.
You're right. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. And I've been saying it for a long time. I mean, I would eat clone meat, no problem. But that's not the point.
You may already have if you've gone to the States, right? You may already have.
Yeah, no, exactly. So the point is that, first of all, people want to know what they're buying. And 2, we've been seeing all of these advancements, technological advancements within the food industry, making the food industry more effective, more efficient to reduce costs. I think the consumers, what they're saying is that what's in it for us? That's really the point here. And so if you're saving money with genetic engineering, with gene editing, with cloning, whatever, anything, if you're not labeling, how can you possibly transfer those financial benefits onto the consumer? That's I think that's the real debate to me. And because right now what we're seeing are regulators fearing to fear, essentially. But I think the real point is to protect margins. And so if you're actually labeling two pieces of meat, one is clone, one is not, and the clone one is half price, that changes the conversation altogether. And so the people were saying it's a nothing burger. Actually, it's a something burger, and that burger may be cloned and you don't know about it.
All right. Well said. Number 4. Let's move on. Number 4.
We're at number 3 now. Number 3.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
You're not keeping up.
Nothing unusual about that, Sylvain. Trying to keep up with you.
So number 3 is tariffs and counter-tariffs. I think that was a natural to be on the podium there. Obviously, Donald Trump decided to tariff the entire world. And as much as Canadians disagree with the policy, and I'm certainly one of them, I think it's a ridiculous thing to do, to tariff food. But he did it. But what was really concerning is that Ottawa decided to do the same, and on March 4th. And so to me, that was a really big decision that actually deserved to be on the podium this year. And I'm thankful for Prime Minister Carney to have eliminated all tariffs. And just a few weeks ago, of course, we learned that Donald Trump was doing the same thing in the U.S., obviously because of Thanksgiving, and people were starting to notice higher food prices. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that our food inflation rate is higher than America's still, despite the tariff bonanza going on in the U.S. So number 3, tariffs and counter tariffs. Number 2, you probably disagree. I suspect you may disagree with that one. But anyways, I'm going ahead with number 2, with the grocery code of conduct finally being established this year.
I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence.
You're married to retailers.
Well,
you're a retail guru.
Well, listen, I think, no, I don't think that's my perspective. My perspective is we
never agreed on this one. So,
well, not entirely. We agreed in somewhat, but not entirely. I mean, I wonder about its impact. We'll see. Is basically, I'm very interested.
Its impact is going to be muted because draft number 11. So I have an idea of what's in the code now, and it's a very different code than in August, to be honest. So I'm hoping it's going to work. But the one thing that media is not saying, or what I'm hearing out in the media, is that we're talking about the grocery code of conduct, but it's more a code of ethics when you actually read it. And a code of ethics, the difference between a code of conduct and a code of ethics is about behavior. A code of conduct is more about decisions and reviewing decisions that are actually made. And I think there's a huge difference. So am I hoping that the code will work? Of course I hope, but I think we're asking grocers to sign on to a much weaker model than what we had just a few months ago. And it is possible that it won't work as a result. I'm hoping it's going to work, but I suspect it may not work, which may lead to more conversations in Ottawa.
Well, I'd say 2 things. One, it looks like everybody, a couple of big guys haven't signed on yet, but are saying they're going to sign on by the end of the calendar year. TikTok, they got to get to that. And then we're going to have Karen Proud back on the pod next year.
Yes.
We've had her on. She's been wonderful.
And I will ask her that question, really, to be honest. Draft 11, because there were 11 drafts, and the last one that I saw wasn't really the same. It was just not the same. Yeah.
Well, we're going to have her on. We've got lots of great content, as I mentioned off top, already in the can, so to speak. So we're going to give that some time to percolate in 26. So we'll have her on in the spring, and we'll get a perspective about how's it going. How's it going? So you can look forward to that. Drum roll, please.
Yes, please. And the number 1 food news story of the year 2025 is structural and food inflation. Oh yeah, very sexy. Very sexy. It's last year it was similar, but I do think that the public discourse around inflation did change this year. I think basically because of the election, Jagmeet Singh is no longer on the political scene pointing fingers at grocers. The greedflation campaign is still out there, but it's not as much out there. And I think people are starting to realize that our food inflation problem is way deeper than first expected. It's not cyclical. It's not temporary. It's structural. And what we mean by structural, of course, is, well, you have to look at things like interprovincial trade barriers, poor logistics, supply management, the carbon pricing policy, labor laws that differ from that change from one province to another. All of these things combined are just really making things much harder for the food industry. And so, because we talked about this last week. There's this decoupling between food inflation and inflation started in 2008 under Prime Minister Stephen Harper. This is not new. Some of our policies recently have actually just made things worse. But our problem really started in 2008, and we're starting to feel it now. And so I'm hoping. I think we've started to have really honest conversations about what's actually is going on here. But again, the media, it's complicated. And so, of course, it's always harder to explain something people can't see. They'll point fingers at grocers because they can see a grocery store, but problems are way more complicated. And so I think we've actually made some progress there.
Yeah, it's a very astute observation, this idea of structural versus, these key drivers we often would talk about, environmental, that's one thing, but the structural element.
It's not normal to see America seeing food inflation move up in lockstep and with tariffs while we're actually dealing with a huge gap. I mean, right now, given what happened this week, the delta between inflation and food inflation is now at 2%, which is the highest among G7 countries with the exception of Japan. And Japan food is not as expensive. So I'd say there's a problem. I mean, it's not normal to see what's going on here.
Well, on that note, we're going to come back and talk about that after the break. We're going to have a listen to our good friends at Cattle, who tell us about how to keep your hand on the pulse of people in a rapid fashion, a rapid pulse, I guess you could say. And then we're going to get to our interview with Ryan and Janet. And I learned some things about mushroom and the industry I did not know. For example, thinking in the context of temporary foreign workers, it's not a seasonal thing. It's 12 months of the year, so they need a very different structure to the program. And I'm a big mushroom fan, so I enjoyed our final interview for the year. And as you said, we got him in. We got him in this year. It's an important issue. So let's have a
mushrooms.
Listen. Need fast, reliable Canadian shopper insights? Meet Rapid Response, Cattle's most popular survey tool. In just 5 questions, you can reach any audience in Canada, French, English, or both, with results delivered in as little as 5 business days. Whether you've got a big retailer meeting coming up or need quick, credible data to guide decisions, Rapid Response gives you expert research and a powerful Excel-based dashboard, all for just $2,500, with subscription options that can save you even more. As a listener of the Food Professor podcast, your first Rapid Response is free. Just email at insights@cattle.ca and mention the Food Professor. That's insights@cattle.ca.
All right, we have 2 special guests joining us today from the mushroom world. We've never had a guest from the mushroom industry. Representing Mushrooms Canada, we have joining us Ryan Koeslag, Executive Vice President and CEO of the group. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
And also we have Janet Krayden, Agri-Workforce Specialist, joining us also from Mushrooms Canada. Welcome, Janet.
Thanks for having us.
So to start things off, first of all, could you tell us, Ryan, what is Mushrooms Canada? What are you guys all about?
For sure, yeah. No, and thanks again for having us on your show. And so Mushrooms Canada is the group that represents all of the mushroom growers in the country. So we have mushrooms grown 365 days a year, 7 days a week, we're winter, summer. It's a product that you wouldn't necessarily think that Canada could be growing at all times in the middle of this winter and cold condition, but we do, right? And so whether you're in British Columbia, Ontario, or out east, you can buy a fresh Canadian mushroom at all times in your grocery store. We actually supply nearly 100% of the grocery stores across the country. You might not always think that when you go into those grocery stores that you're buying a Canadian mushroom, but you are actually. And so we have growers, 35% of the industry we say is grown in British Columbia and 60% in Ontario. And then the remainder is Alberta, Manitoba, and Quebec. So those are your main mushroom growing areas. And so we get together and we represent those growers and fight for their interests. We advocate for the more consumption of mushrooms. We promote the healthiness and the nutritional value of mushrooms. And we also try to coordinate research projects on behalf of all those growers. So that's who we are. We've been around since 1957. And, it's been a great industry to be a part of.
That's great. Now, Ryan, mushrooms are one of the fastest growing fresh categories in Canada. Can you tell us why? And can you tell us more about mushrooms, the mushroom market in particular, the last, say, 5 years in Canada?
Yeah, so I think that there's really been a particular uptake in understanding how mushrooms can be associated with any type of dish, right? We don't often consider mushrooms to be a center plate item, but it definitely complements, savory dishes really well. And I think that as people become more familiar with the different types of mushrooms, we have agaricus, which is your white creminis, portobellos. That's your type of mushroom that we often see in the grocery store. And, there's a lot of nutritional value associated with that. We have vitamin D. We have an umami effect where, you don't have to add as much salt. We've been looking at ergothylene as a part of promoting the goodness of mushrooms, which is really good for brain health and reparation. So it's I think as we see more people find that interest in mushrooms, they're also going into specialty mushrooms with the shiitakes and the oyster mushrooms. So I think we're seeing that interest and with that nutritional value, that's why our markets have been increasing, for a number of years prior to where we see this inflationary issue come about. We were increasing for specialty mushrooms around 20%, and prior to that, we were around 5 or 6% for the whites. But as we see inflationary pressures happening, we do see a bit of a stagnation of the mushroom markets right now, and with that, we've been managing the outputs of that. But we export nearly 40% of what we grow into the United States, and that's been a phenomenal story for our industry. And as those purchasers in the United States see our quality and they see our our commitment to being a consistent supplier, predictable supplier, we've been benefiting and finding more markets in the United States.
Well, I actually had no idea that mushrooms are good for the brain. That's great. That's right. I should eat more mushrooms.
That's right. It's our campaign, and in partnership with the American Mushroom Council, it's all about, the magic of mushrooms and how mushrooms are really good for the brain. And there's a lot of new science that's coming out.
Magic of mushrooms. I see what you did there.
That's right. Yeah, there's some smart marketing folks that came up with that.
I'm sure. Now, you export. So you export 40% of your production into the U.S. Where else do you export other than the U.S.?
Yeah, so there's actually, beyond the United States, there's very few places that we export fresh. We're a fresh market industry. We don't go into the freezing and canning. We see that really being dominated by both China and Europe. So talking fresh, really it's to the United States. We do hear that there's more actually being exported now to Japan. Between those two countries, that's really the vast majority of what we grow.
All right. So Janet, you're all about costs. I mean, that's your focus as a representative of Mushrooms at Canada. And I know you've been, you and I, we've known each other for years, and you're always concerned about input costs for the sector. So what are some of your concerns right now, top line concerns when it comes to input costs for producers?
Yeah, so we find generally that the farmers are absorbing about 30% inflationary costs per year. And it's like cumulative every year, and they're absorbing these costs. And it was good, like now that the carbon tax, which the farmers were paying full 100%, has been removed to some degree. But we're finding that it goes through the full food chain now, including the industrial carbon tax. So it all adds up. And we're always concerned because during COVID, we found the government, like agriculture and agri-food became a priority. And now we're very concerned because it seems like agriculture and agri-food is no longer a priority at the same time that they keep saying they want more local food. So the issue that I deal with as the workforce specialist is helping the farms recruit and retain workers and fill job vacancies. And we're finding like all the farms, they have over 70% Canadians, but for the harvesting jobs, which are the in-demand jobs, if we can't get Canadians, we really need to allow workers in. And we're finding with the overall changes to the temporary foreign worker program, agriculture, we're just questioning, is it a priority anymore? Because it doesn't seem to be with the operations, and we're losing more and more program options to allow farmers access to labor.
Janet, it seems the industry's pretty labor intensive. Would you agree? I want to just set a foundation. I mean, is there a lot of technology in the harvesting piece, or is it just by definition one of those things that needs to be heavily labor focused? What do you guys think about that, and what are your farmers doing?
Both. It's actually, we find the Canadian mushroom farms are super high tech. Mm-hmm. They've done huge investments into technology, but we will always need workers to help operate the technology. Mm-hmm. And it also allows the farms then to produce and pick more mushrooms. So, like I said, 70% of the workers on the mushroom farms across Canada are Canadians. Mm-hmm. They're producing Canadian product for the stores, which is local. And then we need that 30% to help pick the mushrooms. And the challenge with mushrooms is they use robotics, but the robots are not at the stage that they won't bruise the mushrooms. So the human
sensitive
hand,
enough, right? They're not fine motor skills. Is that
the human hand is unique. So there's still a need for labor as well, and we think that will continue for a very long time. For
the foreseeable future. Now let's talk about, when it comes to people, let's talk about recruitment, retention, or training. So 70% of the people working these farms are here in Canada, but you're looking for additional help. Now, what are the challenges there? You've kind of broadly said that it's not as much of a focus. You mentioned the temporary foreign worker program. So how do you recruit? Do people come back? And what's the training like? Is it obviously very, very important. And by the way, I'm a big fan of mushrooms. Love mushrooms, by the way. My wife and I agree on many, many things. Mushrooms are not one of them, unfortunately. But
here,
mine too.
My family, actually.
I love mushrooms.
Whenever you get a pizza, one half of that pizza is covered in mushrooms. Yeah. I'll just say that.
I don't get it. I mean, mushrooms are so great.
I don't know. I don't get it either. But then it wouldn't be the only thing. So let's get back to the biggest challenge is recruitment, retention, or training. Which of those three things are the biggest challenge? And is there a legislative or regulatory thing that would kind of smooth the path there?
Yeah, so for the mushroom farms, they recruit ongoing advertising to fill the job vacancies. When Canadians don't apply, then they do use the temporary foreign worker program. It's called the agricultural stream. where the workers come for 2-year contracts. And so what we find is for our workers, which are permanent full-time, not seasonal, there always seems, it's year-round, permanent full-time. And there's always sort of a disconnect with the program, which was originally set up for the seasonal agriculture worker program for the fruit and vegetable outside. So we need more options for our workers that allow them to stay. Once they're trained, there's intensive training. It takes over 6 months to train a mushroom harvester. We want them to stay, and that will help, help the entire agriculture workforce. So we had a really good pilot program, $2,750 per year. With the government, it was called the Agri-Food Immigration Pilot, and they ended it in May, and it was entirely successful. Was used, well used, over 4,800 workers within the pilot that were using it. We found all our farms and farm workers were starting to use it, and it had very specific criteria to allow the farm workers that are here year round to stay if they wanted to. And we fully supported that. And we don't know why the government ended the program. So we continue to advocate for that. We had 11 groups sign a letter, including the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, where we're saying, we need something like that back. We can't squeeze agriculture and agri-food out of the immigration plan if they're wanting to reduce their numbers. Maybe they should do it more with international students and
more
stuff like that.
More strategically, right? And
strategically.
And Ryan, is that the issue here? Is that, if you look at the program, is it keeping pace with the needs of the growers? It doesn't sound like it is, because is it caught up in the whole overall challenges with the system where there is some abuse and far outside the world of agriculture that it's creating new vulnerabilities, just as Janet was saying? The program was great, it was working great, but for, your kind of collateral damage, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and this has been really an ongoing issue for the agriculture labor programs since probably the beginning and the creation of all these programs. We're always being swept or painted with the same brush as, some of these bad actors when, I think we've had years or decades of having evidence of, good practice and good use. And we advocate for these programs on behalf of these workers that, not necessarily we get credit for. The agriculture immigration program, we fought to have that available for our workers. And that doesn't necessarily mean that those workers will continue to work under the mushroom industry. And that's perfectly fine. But we do find evidence that once they immigrate, that they continue to work in mushrooms for up to a decade. So that's been a positive thing for us. And I think the other thing that Janet didn't mention was that pilot program launched during COVID, right? And so we really had 2.5 years of fake launch, right? You could almost call it a fake launch or a non-launch or a, mislaunch because of everything that went on with really the delivery of that program in addition to how the response was received during that time. Sure. So we're talking those 4,800 really coming through the last 2 and a bit years because of the situation of COVID going on. So I look at it as a big success and that we need to have more of those programs. We tailored it. We worked with the government to make sure that we were responding to the specific needs of our workers. So we just got it set up. We just got it going and then it's gone. And we're being put into the categories of all these other groups and we're worried about our numbers. And we're not talking a whole lot of people here, but they're very important and they're very big numbers for our industry. So I think that should be recognized and should be pulled apart. We always ask for egg-specific everything when we talk about these programs, and we need to be prioritized, like Janet mentioned before. Go back to those COVID days when food and egg were very important. It should be like that all the time.
No kidding. I want to just go back to the automation question for a bit. Ryan, what are you really interested in or really optimistic about innovations in the sector? It sounds like, it's coming eventually. There'll be some kind of manual dexterity in terms of picking, but it's not anytime soon. So what does have you excited about technology for your farmers?
Yeah. Well, first off, I would say, I think it's exciting because a lot of the robotics technology is Canadian. It's being developed here in Canada, Western University, and out in British Columbia, there's some technology going on. I think that Canada is really being a leader in this robotics technology in a world of, and we just spoke before the podcast started, I'm a Dutch, and my ancestors are Dutch from, right. And so a lot of ag and the mushroom industry are dominated by Dutch technology, and that's the new technology that you often here is being brought into Canada is from Europe and Holland. But this is a Canadian technology. I think we are excited of where that possibly could go. We're talking the difference of, working under traditional, hours in the sense of humans where, these robotics can work all the time in a mushroom growing room where mushrooms, they expand in size. I think it's 4% every hour. So they're constantly growing. When you talk about a growing bed, they're often, they're harvested 3 times or 3 flushes. And so you go through and you harvest it once, and then you go through a little while later and you harvest it again. Whereas the robots would be able to do that at all time as those mushrooms are growing. So there's a lot of exciting things about that and how it could essentially change the dynamics of the industry. But right now we're seeing, a lot of robotics and automation being paired together with the workers right now because, again, the workers are pulling probably nearly 100% still of those mushrooms. The robotics are getting there, but they're not really, taking over the humans yet at this point. So, there's a lot of integration of automation and the robotics working with our workers. So we still see these programs to be very vital and very important to us. And I should mention too, as part of why we've been doing really well in exporting and expanding our industry is in part because of a sense of stability with the temporary foreign worker program. And so we want to continue to make sure that program is good for us and good for our mushroom industry, but there are improvements that can be had. And this immigration pilot is another example of, a good thing that we had that's been lost, and we want to make sure we're heading in the right direction, maintaining that momentum, because that stable labor supply is there, we're able to take advantage of markets and continue to expand. So that's why we're advocating.
Janet, tell us more about Mushrooms Canada's sustainability story. Of course, a lot of people are talking about environmental stewardship, and we often forget that farmers are probably the best environmental stewards that we have. What are some of the initiatives that you're seeing out there in your sector, basically building an argument around sustainability for the sector?
So all the farms, or the majority of the farms that are the members of Mushrooms Canada, a lot of them grow organic. They use organic practices. They, with their compost, that is basically, it's using recycled materials from local farmers, from chicken farms and the straw. And
how big is the organic market within mushroom, approximately?
Ryan, you can explain that more. As far as I know, there's just almost all the farms that we deal with are always telling me that they are
talking
organic.
Half, more than half, or
yeah. So we always say that our industry is representative of either people who are organic or certified organic. So really every single one of those mushrooms that are out there are organic, or maybe haven't gone through the certification of organic. And sometimes it's not identified, or the value of marketing as organic is there. But it is that type of an industry in Canada. We don't use pesticides and all those types of things. And because of the new technology and the new barns that they've been building, we don't have the disease and pest pressures that you might see south of the border, as a result of their climate. But because of these investments, we don't have those types of issues of the molds and the flies and all that type of thing. So because of those advancements, organic has been a very understandable practice to get under, and so it might not always be marketed as organic, but the practice is still organic. But
right.
the technology is like the highest. Like that's like when on the farm tours I've been in, I've been like amazed and almost like shocked at the level of science that Canada had and the technology investments, which I've helped support as the farms have a lot of the farms have grown in the last 5 years. So it's really amazing. And so it compared to the US, they've put so much more technology investment in, and the science with mushroom growing for all the mushrooms, fresh mushrooms you see in the store is absolutely amazing. Like from what I've physically seen, I've been amazed every time I've went.
I guess before I throw it back to Michael, I guess I have a question to both of you, Ryan and Janet. What is the one thing, or maybe a couple of things that you would wish consumers would know more about mushrooms in general, or even grocers? What are some of the unique things about mushrooms that we rarely know or we rarely mention out there?
Yeah, staying on kind of this labor track, I always find that a lot of people don't understand necessarily how much we advocate for the workers, right? The mushroom workers that are out there, and the cost that's associated with them. There's often a misconception that temporary foreign workers are cheap labor, and we, reduce the wage costs and all this types of thing. But at the get-go, we have 75% of our workers who are Canadian. And on top of that, every time we advertise for a worker, it's minimum wage plus, we have other benefits that are associated with working in mushrooms. You can get so much for how much you're picking. We provide, for a temporary foreign worker, we provide the housing as well as transportation to and from. There's often language services that are associated with the farms. We're here to help them be successful as they work in our industry. And a lot of people don't hear that side of the story and how the relationship is built between the farms and the workers. We have probably one of the best examples of a living arrangement down in Leamington with Highline Mushrooms, where they have what I describe as a university type campus, where the workers have their own bathroom, their own bedroom, and they share a living space. They have basketball fields. They have, it's a really nice situation. And it is a prime example of how the value for those workers is there. Right? Yeah. And that same CEO that was there before, he often would say, we're a people business. It just happens to be that our people are picking mushrooms. And so, when you think of it that way, a lot of the time that is not the message that you hear on the mainstream. But, I think that if we saw and had more conversations with those workers, we'd realize how much our farmers are standing up for our workers and how those relationships are much better than what they're being portrayed.
Janet, what's if we turn our mind to 2030, what does success look like for the Canadian mushroom sector? It sounds like it's a fantastic contributor to the ag culture and the agriculture. It's wonderful to hear so much grown here in Canada as opposed to imported into Canada. So what does success look like? Is it getting this sorted out, this temporary foreign workers and this part sorted out? Is that what success looks like in 2030?
Yes.
That's 100%. Sounds like so much is going well. There's just one thing. Just got to get this one thing figured out.
It's like if you can't fill those job vacancies, it means the production has to decrease. Those issues that we're having, some workers may have to be sent home. Mm-hmm. We're very concerned because the processing of the paperwork for the workers is deteriorating to the point that some farms are reporting that they've been waiting on the agricultural stream work permits, which are supposed to be prioritized, for over 17 months. And all of this is getting worse. So we need a reset. I would have liked to see more in the budget, like some more money put towards operations and processing. They're developing a whole new program for agriculture and fish processing. But they never seem to include like priority processing, what that looks like. Like we need to have their paperwork done on a regular basis, because then the farms, we have complete teams helping the workers. They have to keep their health cards up to date. They need to go on their annual vacation to see their family. So these are the things we help support the workers with. And like the amount of investment that the farms do to help the workers with these things, like Ryan said, is really, really incredible. But we're constantly waiting on the government. And it's the government processing, and that can make the workers vulnerable. Like they're always worried about the farm employers making the workers vulnerable, but it's the poor processing of the paperwork which can make the workers vulnerable. And we really need that agri-food immigration pilot reconstituted, because they've done it for the caregivers, they've done it for the rural and remote, which doesn't work where the job vacancies are for agriculture. We need this back for agriculture and agri-food primary processing. We need some access for our workers within this immigration levels plan that they've released, because they're cutting back on everything, but we need a piece of that for the agriculture sector to allow the farm employers to fill job vacancies when Canadians are not applying. So we can have local food, local affordable food.
It's what everybody wants and everybody's calling for at all levels. So thank you so much, both of you, Janet and Ryan, for sharing this. Hopefully we'll help get the word out, and hopefully some of the listeners might be in decision-making capabilities or influence. We'll talk about it on the pod. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. It's
Absolutely.
a wonderful industry. And, once again, I like me a nice portobello mushroom burger. So, I'm kind of
stuffed.
It's stuffed. Listen, I'm with you. I think we hear this over and over again, that collateral damage issue, as I mentioned before, gets in the way of the bigger objectives of feeding people and with great products. So thank you again, both, for coming on, the Food Professor, joining Sylvain and I, and sharing the story and telling us all about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate this.
Thank you for joining us.
It.
All right, we're back. We were just talking about magic mushrooms. Sylvain and I were, anyway, not necessarily Ryan and Janet, since I'm in the home of them here in the groovy Vancouver. All right, you just ended off...
Vancouver.
It's very groovy here. We just ended up talking about inflation and structural challenges. You just touched on it, but talk about your sense of the latest inflation data. If you have any other comments to add to what you're seeing.
4.7%. 4.7% at the grocery store. That's pretty high, and I think it's a bit of a warning for 2026, unfortunately. But essentially, what we're learning now is that the food industry is unable to absorb global geopolitical shocks like the U.S. There's a reason why President Trump is saying to companies like Walmart and Costco, eat up the tariffs, because they can. Our companies can't. So when you I'm pointing at food processing in particular, okay? Because farmers will farm and will sell and will actually offer their products to the best bidder, and retailers will retail the best they can. But in the middle, I think stakes are really, really high. And in the United States, you have a variety of different companies with options. If ingredient A from supplier A increases by 30%, well, that one company can actually buy ingredient A somewhere else because of its buying power. They have options. In Canada, we have the CPGs, like the PepsiCos of the world, and Maple Leaf and McCain and these big companies with options. And we have the small companies, but we did talk about this, I believe last week, the unscalable middle, which doesn't allow these companies to have options. So whenever there's ingredient A that goes up in price, they still have to buy ingredient A and adjust prices accordingly. Now, without the code of conduct, of course, they couldn't pass on as much. Now they will. which is why, I mean, if the code works, if it works, then we likely going to see prices being readjusted much more effectively, especially in March, when the blackout period ends. And so there's lots going on. And I know that the Bank of Canada did say yesterday that, the food inflation situation will ease in 2026. Well, basically, Governor Macklem said that because of the fact that tariffs are dropping and energy costs are dropping. Well, energy costs, it's true. Energy costs are pretty low. The barrel of oil is at its lowest in 5 years, which is good news, but it may not last. We don't know. And with what's going on with the code of conduct and processing in Canada, I'm very concerned. And so until we're able to scale up the unscalable middle, we're gonna find ourselves always in a position not to be able to absorb shocks as what we're seeing in the U.S., unfortunately. And to me, that's really the much more important conversation we need to have as a country.
All right. Let's somewhat connected. Let's move on and let's talk about Colabar. So a Quebec-based distributor, and I've been watching this as well. You made it in your notes. First of all, tell the people who they are, what they do, and what's going on there.
Yeah, Colabar is an important company. So when you look at food service, you'll see a couple of big companies. Cisco, of course, Cisco with an S, not Cisco with a C.
Right.
Cisco is a huge company, and of course, in second place, you have Gordon Foods Services, GFS. That's a big player in food service. And number 3 is Colabar, and Colabar has about 700 employees, and Colabar is really important for Quebec in particular because it actually gives a chance to smaller companies, the unscalable middle, to basically provide their products to restaurant operators. If they go under, if they close, because they actually made an announcement yesterday that they actually could ask to be protected from creditors. I think it's inevitable because they were also cyber attacked earlier this year, which cost them a lot of money. We don't know exactly how much, but it did cost them a lot of money. But I do think there's going to be some restructuring going on. But Colabar, it's not a too big to fail situation. Don't get me wrong, but Colabar has really good relationships with key smaller suppliers in the province that actually needs more attention. And I'm not saying that GFS or Cisco would just overlook some of these suppliers. But
it's a scale business. They're a different scale of business for sure.
It's a different scale of business, yeah. And so they don't really take at heart where food is coming from. And of course, Cisco and GFS are very much focused on their own labels, which is fine. I mean, it's part of their strategy, but it's just Colabar, I think, has a purpose in the industry for food service. And I'm just hoping that it won't close. So unfortunately, I think news are going to be bad for a while, but I do think that they're going to come out of it. They're going to right-size the company, and they will survive. But I suspect that they'll be able to, agree with their creditors and move on.
All right. Well, we'll keep a close eye on that for 26, and our best wishes to them to get through it.
Absolutely.
I mean, just these cyber events, man. Even if you get through it, you take the charge, but it takes all your time and attention and focus away from building business.
It takes a lot of oxygen for sure.
It takes a lot of the oxygen.
And there are things you can't disclose, and it's tough. Yeah. Absolutely tough. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very tough. Well, let's turn our minds to 2026. Last thing we were going to talk about, how are you thinking? What are the big stories you're thinking about 26? We talked about one of them, which is the actual code coming into play. We'll be following that one closely. What else are you going to follow for 26?
Well, the front of package labeling, it'll be interesting to see exactly like how companies are adapting to this regulation, which will be put in force, which goes into force on January 1st of 2026. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Also, we'll be watching the effects of Ozempic or the effects of generic drugs to allow people to lose weight. And finally, I mean, looking at 2026, I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about AI and the morality of it. I don't know if you saw in the news in the U.S. A few days ago, there was a report of people. People were put into the same room at the same time to order through Instacart the same exact products from the same location, and they all got different prices. With algorithms, you will customize the approach and you will optimize profitability, which is fine. And we see that with hotels. We see that with flights. People are accustomed to
Nothing new.
There's nothing new, but when it comes to food, I actually think there's unfinished business there from a morality perspective. Like if the other guy, like if you're shopping for eggs and I learned that your eggs are cheaper or more expensive or whatever, for whatever reason, because you buy more eggs or, maybe I'm going to start because you actually cook and you buy more eggs, you get cheaper eggs. Maybe I'll buy off eggs from you.
It's interesting.
I mean, there's a lot of things going on here that I suspect will, from the supply side of things, AI can actually optimize everything, and we're seeing it already. But from a demand side perspective, consumers, I think they're a little bit fearful of AI, seeing AI being weaponized against them, and I do think it's going to be a big conversation in the new year.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, dynamic pricing is what you're talking about, which is nothing new in the market, but powered or super powered by AI. I mean, there's the opportunity to do good things, right? It's a slow time, 4:00 in the afternoon. Let's lower prices a little bit.
It's kind of I'm kept reminded that perhaps this is like the third world bazaar online. When you go into a bazaar, you negotiate everything, and because you're a friend of someone. Because you're a friend of someone, you may actually get a better price.
Or maybe you're friendly with the right AI agent now. You've got a synthetic org chart of AI agents. This is already starting to happen. Like it's very interesting.
And it's all based on information you put out there
exists out there about you already.
I just learned this week that there's a Grokpedia page written about me.
Yeah, Grok Media. Well, you're such a big guy on X, right? And Grok is the AI engine of.
But when you look at my Wikipedia page, there's actually a lot of mistakes. I'm not even married to the right person. I mean, it's just there's a lot of mistakes there. But when I was sent the link, and I looked at it, and it was scary because it was very detailed and accurate. The only mistake was my birthday. They didn't have the right birthday.
Does it talk about the podcast?
Yeah, of course. It talks about the food professor podcast. Absolutely. And how the food professor podcast is impacting, influencing policy in Canada. I mean, they actually talk about all of these things, and it's actually, it's very neutral. It's not like a cheerleading sort of, but I posted it on X, and people were saying, my goodness, Grokpedia is much more accurate than Wikipedia, and it doesn't seem to be weaponized by left-leaning advocates. Because every time I say something on television or on radio that someone doesn't like, they go to Wikipedia to bash my reputation. That's what they do. But Grokmedia seems to not be affected by that, which is great.
That's great. Like AI can be our friend and AI can be our enemy. And I think 2026 will be yet another year of trying to understand that. And if you're not paying attention to what's happening in AI, really, it's not everything, but it's a lot.
Well, AI is not always accurate because on my page, it was saying that you were a great cook. So that's, I don't know.
I thought you were going to say on your page, it says I was a great guy. It's wrong. I am not that. I'm not a bad cook.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, in barbecue. Anyway, listen, that brings an end to this episode. What a great way to end 2025. As I always do at the end of the year, I take the opportunity to thank you, my friend. I appreciate you, and I learned so much in our sharing of information. And get a front row seat to that brain of yours, and what you're thinking is a real treat. So thank you for being my partner in this, and we're looking for a very exciting 2026, including being at Seattle and Montreal. We'll be there together. Lots of great interviews coming up, and I wish you and everyone listening happy holidays. We're going to take a couple of weeks off, but again, we'll be back early January with more great episodes.
All right, you take care, my friend.
All right, safe travels.
Happy holidays.